Thank you.
That was the longer on the line. It was longer.
Well, great. Okay. Good afternoon. This is case PO 2021 00012. And good afternoon, Mr. Coughlin.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
How do you pronounce your last name? Coach?
You can just Coach is Chapman, but you can go to Chapman. It makes it easier.
Chapman. And the plaintiff is here. I assume you're Ms. Cluff?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So let me, for those of you who are here, we get a large turnout for injunctions once in a while. Can you hear me, Mr. Blumgren?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Just by way of introducing the court is about 1.5 times the size of Rhode Island in terms of physical, geographical jurisdiction. Black Canyon, parts of Crescent Valley, Lake Pleasant, and Kentworth. And we handle civil cases, including those coming from Dewey-Humboldt and Crescent Valley. Just to give you a short introduction. We handle criminal cases outside those two towns. Okay. So, Mr. Coughlin, are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Chapman, are you prepared to proceed?
I am, Your Honor, and I would ask that the rule of exclusion be invoked at this time.
Agreed. Who all, if you're here as a witness, please stand up.
The one on the phone is also written.
Yes, Mr. Blumgren, or Glenn, raise your right hand. All you, raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, you be seated. Thank you. Now, the rule that Ms. Chapman wants to exercise is called the rule of exclusion. The rule of exclusion says that witnesses don't get to hear other witnesses until that witness is done testifying. That allows witnesses to start off with a blank slate, haven't heard previous testimony. Their testimony would, we hope, be fresh and not get the benefit of or doubt of the previous witnesses. So the way we handle that is we'll have everyone that's a witness now that you're sworn in, step out in the lobby and just have a seat out there, and we'll get to you as soon as they can.
Okay.
Okay, for those of you who are left in the courtroom, the case in this instance needs to be proven to a level of evidence called the preponderance of evidence. The preponderance of evidence means it's more likely true than not true. Mr. Blumgren, who are you here? Thanks. Who are you here to testify on behalf? Okay, so I'm going to put you on hold, and we'll get back to you, and that will exclude you from hearing the rest of this proceeding until you're called on to be a witness. You understand?
Your Honor, would you give him permission to disconnect and we can call him back? He's in Indiana.
We called him.
Right, could he disconnect instead of holding, because he's going to be our witness. I anticipate plaintiff's going to have several witnesses, so that he's not holding on the line.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Blumgren, we'll call you back.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and stay next to the phone if you would.
I will.
Thanks, sir. Bye now.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Coughlin, please proceed.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Barry Thomas to the stand.
Your Honor, before we proceed with testimony, I have one matter of housekeeping with respect to the parties on the injunction. obviously direct the scope of my cross-examination. Both an adult child as well as a spouse to Mr. Thomas was included on the initial injunction. And we would move to have them dismissed off for being improper parties, given the fact that both individuals are over the age of 18. The rules don't provide for plaintiffs to collectively be put on. Each plaintiff would need to
Unless they live under the same roof.
With respect to the elements, though, they would have to be proven as to each plaintiff. It's not a
That's
series.
true. That's true.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Thomas. Raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, Rummer. Mr. Thomas, where do you live?
I live at 14620 McCabe Circle in Dewey.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a general contractor.
And do you have any public service responsibilities?
I currently am a town council member for the town of Dewey-Humboldt.
How long have you been a town council member for the town of Dewey-Humboldt?
A little over 6 months now.
So when did you take office?
I believe it was December 1st. I'm sorry, it wasn't. November. I'm sorry.
November.
It was November.
2020?
Yes.
And what are your responsibilities as a council member?
To oversee the function of the town, the things that are brought before the town from the citizens and the community, putting a budget together for the town's funds, and making the town function at a normal level.
How long have you lived in, yep, I count.
Almost 27 years.
How long have you lived in Dewey?
I lived in Humboldt before Dewey-Humboldt became a joint community for 3 years, and have been in Dewey for the remainder.
So how many years total?
Almost 27 years.
All right.
Yes.
And your construction business, do you operate that out of Dewey?
Yes, sir.
What sort of business is it in construction?
General contractor. I build residential homes.
All right. Now, there was an occasion when you learned that Ms. Cluff was interested in you in some fashion. When was that?
I had heard some things from people in the community and from other council that there had been some previous things that have occurred, and I had never met the lady. Never really expected to have any kind of issues. The first time I actually heard her speak was during Zoom meetings. Our council meetings had gone to Zoom because of COVID, and so we were doing all our meetings from home via the computer, and she would participate in those meetings.
During those Zoom meetings, were there multiple Zoom cameras that were viewable on your computer?
Yes.
So could you see Ms. Cluff on your computer?
No.
All right.
No, she never had her profile was just her initials.
But could you hear her voice?
Yes.
And so was that, when during your 6-month tenure was that?
At the very first council meeting, I believe.
Right.
And, I believe she attended every meeting following.
How often does the council meet?
An absurd amount of times. Right now, we're still being in session like 4 times a month. It should be 2 times. We had special sessions that occurred. There were a couple of times when we were having 2 meetings a week. I lost track at like 18 meetings in the first few months. So,
when did the meetings occur? What time of day?
generally at 6:30 in the evening on Tuesday nights, unless there are special sessions, it was called on a different date. And few times those started a little bit earlier. We did have a couple of meetings at the town that were actually just interviews for town manager positions, but those were not open to the public.
Are you compensated for your work for the council?
No, sir.
Are you a sole proprietor of your contracting business?
Yes.
Did you know what Ms. Cluff looked like at any point in time?
No, sir.
Did you know what car she drove?
Not until I had inquired about a vehicle being in our neighborhood. I had a neighbor, we live in a very one way in, one way out of our neighborhood. It's not just, accidentally turn on our street and drive through the neighborhood. And we pretty much all know everybody, all the neighbors. We look out for each other.
Is the neighborhood sparsely populated?
It's all acreage. There's 13 homes in my little development, Golden View Estates, and then there's a couple that lead into it.
How much land is there associated with the 13 residences?
Well, they're like 2 and 3 acre parcels.
Okay.
All of them.
And so where you live, it's on McCabe?
Yes, sir.
So how do you get to McCabe from, let's say, Mortimer Farm?
You have to go down 169, Highway 169 to Foothills. You have to take Foothills Drive to Blue Ridge. You have to turn on Blue Ridge, head up the hill to White. You have to turn on White, drive all the way to the top of the hill to Golden View. You have to turn on Golden View, take that to McCabe Circle, and turn on McCabe Circle.
So are you located on a cul-de-sac?
Yes, sir.
Right. Is your residence itself right on the cul-de-sac or the road leading to it?
The road leading into it, it's a short road. There's only 2 houses on each side of the street before the end of the cul-de-sac, and then there's 2 located at the very end.
And now, when you're standing, let's say, at the end of your driveway, can you see all of those roads you described that lead to your house?
No.
Can you see traffic that's on those roads?
You can see some of them. You can see down to the farm, so you can see the highway. You can see a little bit of Foothill Drive, and you can see McCabe and a little bit of Golden View, but the majority of it is blocked by the rolling hills and the homes that are in there.
Do you recall an incident on February 11th of this year when Ms. Cluff drove by your house?
Yes.
And first of all, how do you know that it was her?
Well, what occurred was my wife and I and my daughter had gone to town, gone to the store. When we got home, as I pulled in the driveway, I looked across to the street directly behind my house and could see a car over there. I mentioned to my wife at the time that it was a car that had resembled a car that my neighbor had mentioned had been up there the day before. And I said, that looks like that car that my neighbor had mentioned. Sat there for a moment and watched it because like I said, we do look out for each other in the neighborhood. The car turned and started, and that's a cul-de-sac also that she was on at the end of it, turned and started to head as if to possibly leave the neighborhood. I pulled on down into my driveway, in which time we got out of the car, and as we did, she had come down Golden View. Instead of continuing straight out of the neighborhood, she turned and came down McCabe Circle and drove right past the front of my house.
Where were you located at the time?
In my driveway.
At what end of your driveway?
I was towards the back of the car, I believe, and kind of had stepped up to see whether the car was leaving the neighborhood or not. From the upper portion of my driveway, I can see down my street towards Golden View, which is the way out, and saw that she had turned and came down our street.
I'm going to show you a photograph. Jack, here's your set. Ask you if you can identify it. There's 2 photographs on page 1.
Yes.
Can you describe what's in the photograph?
In both photographs, there is the top of my driveway, my mailbox, Mrs. Cluff's vehicle, and my neighbors across the street's homes.
Now, there is, in photograph number 1, there's a mailbox.
Yes, sir.
Is that yours?
Yes.
Can you describe what happened at the time, just immediately preceding you taking this photograph?
Well, as she came down the street, I saw her drive down the street and she had her camera or her phone in her hand. Went down to the end of the street and stopped. It's a cul-de-sac. I stood down out of my driveway by a few feet, which is behind my garage, and stood there for a few minutes. And as she came back by, I stepped out and snapped the photos of her because I wanted to try and identify who was driving by my house taking pictures of me and my family.
So photographs 1 and 2 are when you first saw her drive by?
Drive by my house, yes.
And
No, I'm sorry, that was on her way out of she had driven past with her camera and then had turned around and come back leaving. And that's when I was able to get my phone out and take her picture.
would you please describe how you knew that she had a camera?
Well, it was obvious, I could see it in her hand.
And so what was it? What did it look like in her hand? And how did she hold
Facing
it?
towards my home and my family and myself.
All right. Did it appear that she was taking a video, or was it more of a snapshot?
I couldn't answer that. I couldn't give a fair assumption of how she was operating it.
Can you just act this out as if you're her in the car and tell me what you saw her arm and hand do with that telephone?
Well, as she went by, she was holding it up on at her driver's window.
Do you have a telephone on you?
No, sir, I don't.
I'm going to give you my phone. It's off. But just to show the judge what she did.
Well, as she came down the street the first time, she had it up like so, and as she went by, it looked to me as if she was holding it just like this, and she drove past me, after what would have been her passenger side. Then as she returned back down the street, she was moving quite quickly when she saw me, but I believe I still saw the phone in her hand, and I don't know if it's her left hand or her right hand.
Okay. I'm going to show you 2 more photographs, photograph 3 and 4. And please tell me when those were snapped in that sequence of events.
So in the proper order, I would say that it was number 2 would have been the first picture taken, number 1 would have been the second picture taken. I believe number 4 is just a blow-up of photo identified as number 1, and number 3 would have been the last picture taken as she's leaving.
Okay, thank you. Then can you identify photo number 5?
Yes, this is a blow-up of the license plate that I did when I went to Walgreens and had the pictures developed out of my phone so that I could try and get an identification on it. I was able to zoom in on my own camera on my phone and read this license plate number, and that's how I found out that it was Mrs. Cluff's, because I called the sheriff following this and filed a report, and the sheriff told me that license plate number identified as belonging to Mrs. Cluff.
And there was a later incident at the town hall also, correct?
Yes.
Did you take pictures of her license plate at that time too?
Yes.
Was it consistent with the blow-up of this first incident?
Yes.
And if you will look at these 3 more pages, can you tell me what they are and where they're taken and when?
So I had gone down to town hall to talk to the building official about the matter, and had stepped outside the end door to speak with him, and in doing so, noticed Ms. Cluff had pulled her car right up in front of the main door into the town hall. Didn't put too much thought to it, and till it was brought to my attention that she had her camera in her hand again. As I sat there talking with Dawn, 3 members of the community had come out of the town hall, walked up to us and said, "I'll be darned, we're being filmed again." One went down to the sheriff to file a report. And after finishing my conversation with Mr. Roberts, I went back into the town hall building through the same door I had exited. And as I came out the front door, the door's got glass panels in it, you can see straight through it. There sat Miss Cluff in her car, no farther than you are from me, with her phone like this, pointing it directly at the door. And as I came out the door, she had it in her hand. That is picture number 11, and then a zoom up of it in number 10.
So let me back you up just a little bit. I thought you said you came out and you were talking to 3 other individuals and saying that we're being filmed again, and then you went back in the building?
Yes, I had gone out of the, when I'd gone in the park and went in the front door. I parked one stall over from the front door. Went my 3 doors in the building. Went in, went to talk to Dawn. We went out a different door at the end of the building. Stood there and talked. Miss Cluff had parked next to my car directly at the front door now at that location.
All right.
Once being done with the conversations, I went back in that same door, and as I exited out the same door I originally came in, which was the front door, that's when this occurred.
All right. So as you, the previous time when you said we're being filmed again, did you see her with her camera up?
Yes, you can see it. Well, actually, the 3 citizens that were there, it was the one that brought it to my attention because I was talking with Don. So as they come out the front door, they obviously saw this occurring and went down and spoke to us and said, "Oh, this is happening again." And as I looked down, she was a distance away, but she wasn't in her car. I didn't know for sure she was filming us until I walked out the front door and got her taking pictures of me.
Which exhibit is, which photo number is that?
Photo 11 and 10. Or they're both, basically they're one in the same picture, one's just assumed. And then...
What did you do in response to recognizing that she was...
Well, when I saw her through the window of the town hall building and what she was doing with her camera, I pulled mine out of my pocket, and when I opened up the door, I snapped a picture of her again to identify what she was doing. Walked around behind her car, snapped picture 6 and 7, showing her license plate on her vehicle again, then went and got in the driver's door of my vehicle, and sat there kind of bewildered for a moment, trying to figure out what my next step was going to be, when she backed out of the stall and proceeded to leave out of the parking lot. That's pictures 8 and 9. I then went down to the sheriff's department and filed another complaint against her.
And what was the complaint that you filed? What were you
Stalking
complaining about?
or harassment.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to admit into evidence photos 1 through 11, I believe we have here.
Ms. Chapman?
My only question was, I don't know that a date was established affirmatively for pictures 6 through 11.
Can you tell us when you took those pictures?
Pictures of my home were on February 11th.
The ones at home were February 11th? What
That's
about
correct.
the ones at town hall?
March. I believe it's the 16th. I have it.
Calendar on the wall.
I have it on my phone. It's my phone dates the photographs.
You need to answer your attorney's questions, Mr. Thomas.
All right,
Okay,
then,
I believe it was March. It was March. I think March 16th.
All right, and in your,
Dates are important in the injunctions, so,
Yes, sir.
if you need to turn on your phone in order to establish that, I'm gonna allow you to do it.
Okay.
I can probably accelerate this a little bit just by stipulation, or your petition for the injunction. You stated, while attending a meeting at the town hall, I saw the defendant video me. Is that what you're just
Yes, sir.
talking about?
Correct.
Next to it, the date is 3/16.
316?
Yes.
Correct.
That's accurate?
Yes, sir.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So we have admission into evidence photos 1 through 11, I believe.
Without objection. Will admit them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to hand you 4 or 5 more pages of photographs and ask if you can identify those.
Yes, I can.
What are they? What do they depict?
These are pictures of my neighbor's yards in my neighborhood. Prior to Mr. Coughlin taking my case, I had gone to the town manager and let him know that Ms. Cluff had filed to have a hearing to have this injunction removed, and he in turn called the town attorney. The town attorney was going to work on my behalf because we felt that this was only occurring because of my position
I'm
as
going to
council
object.
member.
I'm going to object this time, Your Honor, to the scope or anything regarding any previous counsel is not relevant to the proceedings, and I don't believe it's necessary to establish a foundation for these photographs.
I can phrase it a different way, Your Honor. Why did you take the pictures?
Objections.
Because I was told that Mrs. Cluff's reason for being in the neighborhood taking pictures was because of vegetation concerns and devaluing the property value in our neighborhoods.
So you took photos of what then?
All the vegetation in the neighbor's landscape and the extremely expensive, nice neighborhoods that we live in, and was kind of trying to show including my front yard and what the concern over vegetation might be. But I see no issues with it.
You know, at this point, I don't think that they're relevant. I'm speculating as to what testimony.
I wanted to submit these as an exhibit, Your Honor, so that you could be reviewing them as he's testifying, but I believe there's an objection.
There is an objection.
I would object at this time, Your Honor, there's speculation, something that he heard from his attorney about something that may or may not be said at this hearing. The plaintiff defendant hasn't testified yet, and this is his case, why he brought the injunction, not what he anticipates the defense to be in this case.
Mr. Coughlin.
Yeah, as I understand, the basis for issuing an injunction for harassment, if the defendant has a legitimate reason for doing certain activities, then that is a defense to a claim of harassment. If, on the other hand, Mr. Thomas has a reasonable fear of being harassed and is in fact harassed, then you have to weigh the two. So that would be the basis for me submitting this in evidence.
A certain hearsay is allowed in injunctions. And I will take the testimony and weigh it accordingly.
All right, then should I submit these to you for your viewing or as an exhibit?
Ms. Chapman?
If the court overrules the injunction, then
Yes, I'm going to overrule.
So this, Your Honor, is photos 12 through 27. So, Mr. Thomas, can you describe, oh, I might have given you oh, you've got it. Okay, you've got the others. So, describe what those photos on the first page are.
Two of the photos are my front yard. Number 19 and 20 show my front yard. Number 18 shows my neighbor's house directly behind mine.
Number what?
I'm seeing.
Number 18.
Okay.
And
The house up on above it is the house over off of Gladstone, which was where Miss Cluff was sitting in her car the very first time I saw her vehicle up there on the 11th.
And your understanding as to why, what the vegetation being photographed was what? That there was too much of it, or what, that it was?
My understanding was that that there was a concern over an absorbent amount of it or something to that effect. Where there was a concern where the vegetation in the neighborhood was devaluing our property values.
All right. Move on then to the next page and tell me what that is.
12 and 13 are just the pictures of house number 18 from the Golden View side of the neighborhood. Number 14 is another neighbor's house, which they've done extensive work on. And I will tell you, all these houses in here also, I believe, except for one, has had fire-wise abatement work done on them. If anybody knows what fire-wise is, it's a grant that is set out to
I'm
help.
familiar with it. Go ahead.
Okay.
All right. So you're the photographer in these photos.
Yes, sir.
And in the images that you captured with your phone, was there excessive vegetation?
No, not that myself or anybody that I know has any concerns over. No.
What's your daughter's name?
21 is the side of my house. My daughter's name is Caitlin.
How old is Caitlin?
Caitlin just turned 28 in June.
And she was one of the protected persons that you listed in your
Yes.
application for injunction? And why?
Caitlin is a disabled person. She's been diagnosed as mentally retarded.
In what sense? I mean, is there an official diagnosis?
Her diagnosis is undiagnosed, uncontrolled seizure disorder. She has a couple of other medical issues that have names longer than I can pronunciate. My wife is much more able to give you the medical definitions, but she suffers greatly from a couple of things. When she eats protein, it turns to ammonia in her system. She has anywhere from 2 to 4 grand mal seizures a week and numerous other small seizures in between. She's had thousands and thousands of seizures in her lifetime, and her mother and I are her caregiver 24/7.
And are there particular triggers?
Particularly what?
Triggers that trigger her seizures?
Stress can bring on triggers. Temperatures, when her temperature level gets above 99.5, where you can almost be assured she's going to have a seizure. There are some thoughts to whether or not some of the medications and dietary things might help exacerbate it. It's because it's an undiagnosed issue. There's no real firm answer. The doctors say she has what's called a perfect brain, but she has full brain seizures. From her whole brain is involved. It's not just left temporal lobe, right temporal lobe, front temporal lobe. It's her whole brain. She was put in the hospital for a study, and she was supposed to have been there for 8 days, and on the second day the doctor told my wife to take her home and love her as much as you can, because these are the seizures that take your life. And there's nothing that they're going to be able to do to prevent that.
How does she react when she's fearful of something?
She expects her mom and her dad to take care of her. She looks to us for help and support, and to try and make her feel better. She has a diminished capacity. She functions sometimes at a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old level, and every once in a while that little 28-year-old will pop out and say something that just makes you step back and smile. But
On the day that in February, when Ms. Cluff drove by taking film or photographs, was your daughter with you?
yes, she was.
Were you concerned about your daughter's reaction to the film?
I was concerned about my daughter's, how I say this? My wife and I have to pick and choose when my daughter is going to be brought out into the public. And it is our decision to do so. When she is having difficult times, when she is uncomfortable, when she is feels like she's going to have a seizure, we do our best to protect her from everything we can possibly, mentally and physically. We protect her in every way we can. On the days where she has a good day, on day 4, after having a strong seizure and then having been medicated and completely unfunctional for a day, and then on day 3 she's starting to feel a little better, and on day 4 she's feeling really good, we'll take her out. We'll go out and do something. When she's having a real good day, we'll take her bowling, but that's very far and few in between.
So on the day, February 11th of this year, when you saw Ms. Cluff drive by the first time, and she was snapping photographs of you and your wife and your daughter, what did you do with your family? What did you tell them to do?
I had my wife get Caitlin in the house.
And so when she came back, when Ms. Cluff came back and was snapping photographs, Caitlin was then safe.
I was looking at Ms. Cluff on the road and not looking back as to whether or not my wife had got my daughter into the home yet.
Okay. But that was your concern,
Yes,
correct?
yes, it was. She had been seizing that day, and wasn't sure. When she's uncomfortable, we got to get her out of harm's way quickly. So if she's on concrete, we get her to in the house. You know, there's just certain things we do. So,
Let's move ahead.
Okay, so so this was on February 11th, then the March 16th incident was at the town hall. When did you then decide to get an injunction?
After some serious consideration,
Why?
Well, I've never done anything like this before. I'm not particular to going to the courts and pulling out injunctions on people or anything, but my wife and I felt that we needed to do what was right to protect Caitlin and to protect our own privacy on our own private property. And therefore, after some consideration, I decided that it was the right thing to do.
And so you went to take out the papers necessary and filed them to get an injunction issued, correct?
Yes,
And this court did that?
yes.
And have there been any incidents since the injunction was issued where Ms. Cluff has violated the injunction order?
Objection.
To your knowledge?
Objection, Your Honor. It's outside the scope of the hearing, outside the scope of the petition.
It's outside the scope of the petition, that's correct. Do you have another way to phrase that, Mr. Coughlin?
Well, Your Honor, I can just say that if there's a potential for modifying this injunction order, and if that's the case, then certainly activity after the injunction was issued is relevant, and in fact, if Ms. Cluff violated the 100-foot rule, then she could be held in contempt. So,
Well, that's true, and yet the finer of that unquote is the sheriff's department.
yes. So, Your Honor, I want to be clear, we can't venture into any activity after the injunction was issued?
Only if it became a police report. I think that's objective third-party take on it.
Before you decided to seek this injunctive protection, were you fearful of the consequences of Ms. Cluff's action?
Yes.
And what did you do? How did you react to that fear?
Since this started, we've had an unusual amount of traffic in our neighborhood. Like I said, I've been in the house a long time. There were only 4 homes when we moved in there. Now we're aware of activity, and it has increased to a level that is just, it's hard to understand. And not knowing who is driving around, what they're doing, what their reasons are. I don't know Mrs. Cluff. I don't understand why she's doing what she's doing. I became a bit fearful for my wife and my daughter's well-being. I have carried a gun for many years, but I've never felt like I had to until now. Because I don't know this person. I do not know what they're capable of doing, and I am not going to let my family be a victim to some unknown circumstance. It's not an easy feeling to have when you're uncomfortable in your own neighborhood, and even my neighbors are uncomfortable. I have neighbors call me because they're out walking their dog saying, Barry, there's a car parked over there at the end of your road
I'm going to
taking
object
pictures.
at this point. This is beyond the scope, and it's beyond the question. I mean, this is talking about his neighbors. This is Mr. Thomas's injunction, not his neighbor's injunction.
Yeah, but it paints a picture, and the court will weigh the testimony.
It's an uneasy feeling having this occur, and it's not typical behavior from any of the people whom I associate with, and
Okay, you paint the picture, and let the court, let the parties know that I've never been involved in Dewey-Humboldt politics, but I live in Dewey-Humboldt. And the politics in Dewey-Humboldt has been, without maybe an unfair but certainly descriptive term, would be volatile for years. There's implications to what you're saying, Mr. Thomas, that if that were the case, if those people were being elicited to come into your neighborhood, that's beyond the reach of the court anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but it's well beyond the reach of the court.
Okay.
Okay.
You weren't fearful of all those unknown people. You were fearful of Mrs. Cluff, correct?
Yes.
That's why you went and got your injunction,
Correct.
right? You didn't take your gun out and use it to enforce the law.
No, sir.
You follow the law.
Correct.
No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Chapman?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Thomas, you indicated that the first time you ever saw Ms. Cluff was on February 11, 2021. Prior to that, you had not actually seen her, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And the first time you saw her was on a public roadway in your neighborhood, correct?
Yep.
Your neighborhood is not gated, right?
Correct.
She never entered private property that you witnessed, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
And you said your neighbors watch out for each other and are looking out for this increased activity. None of them have reported to you seeing Ms. Cluff anywhere close to your private property, your mailbox, your driveway, your yard, correct?
That's correct.
The only place that Ms. Cluff was observed on February 11th was on the roadway behind your house and in front of your house, correct?
Yep.
You've never spoken with her directly.
Correct.
She never spoke to your wife or your daughter on February 11th, did she?
Correct.
And you've referred to it as filming. In fairness, you saw her phone up. You don't know if it was on, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if she was taking pictures, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if she was filming you, correct?
Correct.
You never saw her come into your garage and snap a picture of your daughter.
Correct.
You never saw her talk or snap a picture of your wife, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, your daughter never saw Miss Cluff, had no reason to know who she was or that she was on the public roadway in front of your house on February 11th, correct?
My daughter saw a car.
And as far as your daughter knew, that's all it was, a vehicle, right?
Correct.
Does she routinely get afraid of cars that drive around on public roadways?
Numerous things fear my daughter.
Did Miss Cluff speak to your wife on February 11th?
Nope.
Did your wife have any reason to know that it was Miss Cluff in the vehicle on February 11th?
Not other than our conversation.
After the fact?
Yep.
And prior to February 11th, are you aware of any instance where your wife was even aware of who Miss Cluff was?
No.
On February 11th, your wife knew that there was a vehicle on a public roadway in front of your house, correct?
Yep.
How tall are you, sir?
6'2".
You said you carry a handgun for protection. You've done so all your life. Have you had any firearms training?
No.
Did you ever serve in the military?
No.
Did you ever serve in law enforcement?
No.
Do you practice and are you trained on how to use your weapon for self-defense?
Yes.
Ms. Chapman, how does this relate?
And he's saying that he's fearful of Ms. Cluff. Ms. Cluff will testify here shortly, and the court can assess the credibility of his statement that he is fearful of this individual. You said that you learned Ms. Cluff was interested in you from other council members. What did you mean by that?
I was told by people in the community that were prior council members that she has a history of following people around, taking pictures. She's admitted in her own statement at town council meetings that she sits out in the parking lot and films certain people when they go in and out of the town council, in times when they start, when they leave, when they come back.
And to your knowledge, all of those prior council members have never filed an injunction against harassment against Ms. Cluff, have they?
I don't know.
Well, you actually spoke with council members regarding the injunction before you filed it, didn't you?
I spoke with my wife about filing.
And since you filed the injunction, it has become fairly well known in the community, and you've spoken with other council members about your choice to get an injunction, haven't you?
Oh, sure.
And nobody has ever told you that they have taken steps based on what you say they've informed you about Ms. Cluff.
Objection relevance, Your Honor?
State.
You're aware that Ms. Cluff is politically active in town council meetings. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
And that she attends every meeting that you've ever been to?
No, not every meeting. Not since the injunction was put in.
But before the injunction, she has attended every meeting, correct?
I believe so.
And she engages appropriately at those meetings? She
No,
follows
she
the meeting.
doesn't.
She follows the meeting rules.
Yes.
And she engages people at the meeting, correct?
She engages council members at the meeting?
At the meetings,
Sure.
correct? Fair to say that you first saw on February 11th, you first saw Miss Cluff's vehicle when it was on McCabe Circle, is that fair?
First saw it when it was on Gladstone.
And from the time you saw it on Gladstone till the time it came up and down McCabe and left, do you estimate it was about 3 to 4 minutes?
That's probably a fair assumption.
You never saw the car sit at the end of either street for
It
any
was
period of
sitting at the
time?
end of the Gladstone when we came home.
From the time you saw it to the time it left, about 3 to 4 minutes. Correct?
Possibly 4 or 5, yeah.
You called the sheriff's department and reported it to the police, correct?
Yes,
To your knowledge, they've never filed any charges against Ms. Cluff for her being on public roadway by your house, correct?
correct,
She's never been charged with trespassing on your property.
correct.
She's never been charged with harassing you.
I believe she was with,
She's never been criminally charged with harassing you, has she? You said you
Is
made
the
a,
court's injunction order not a charge? No.
you said you reported stalking to the police and they
Mhm.
never filed charges against you,
Objection
did they?
relevance, Your Honor. Has nothing to do with this injunction. Whether somebody gets criminally charged for the same activity.
No, don't,
You made
Oh,
two,
Warner.
you made 2 reports to the police
Mhm.
and neither of those resulted in any charges against Ms. Cluff for any reason, correct?
As far as I know.
You said on the photographs, six through 11 were taken by you of Ms. Cluff inside her vehicle, right?
Yes,
That was in the public parking lot of Town Hall, correct?
Yep.
That is a place that all individuals have a right to be if they are acting appropriately in that space, right?
yes, acting appropriately, you're correct.
And an individual is acting appropriately sitting in their vehicle on their phone, correct?
On their phone? You mean talking on their phone?
Let me rephrase. When you took photograph number 11 and 10,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what Ms. Cluff was doing, do you?
Yes, I do. You see the light on her camera.
Do you know she
You
was,
see it in the picture.
you're saying you can see a light on her camera.
You can see the light on.
Do you know what Ms. Cluff was doing when you took these photographs?
She was taking pictures of them.
She was in her vehicle with her camera up facing you, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes,
You don't know if she was videoing you, is that fair?
I believe she was.
You don't know if she was taking pictures of you.
I believe she was.
Have you ever asked her?
No,
Have you ever seen any photos of you taken by Ms. Cluff disseminated anywhere?
no,
Have you ever seen them posted on social media?
no,
Have you had your photograph taken by people at Town Hall?
not in the manner from which she has done, no.
Have you ever had your photograph taken at Town Hall by people other than Ms. Cluff?
I imagine I probably have.
Are you aware of any of those photographs ever being disseminated to harass you? Any
injunction was
information?
not-
Stop, I'm asking you questions, you need to answer the questions. You have no information to show that Ms. Cluff used any photographs to defame your reputation.
Objection, irrelevance.
Your Honor, it goes to that has to be proven in this case.
Your Honor, the conduct that is the basis of the injunction was his fear of what he perceived in this camera. It doesn't matter if it was disseminated or if she filed a defamation claim, it's what he feared, what he saw.
Your Honor, she's taking actions. His perception of it doesn't make it true or not. It's his perception.
Objection sustained.
So your testimony is that you are fearful of Ms. Cluff because you don't know her and you don't know what she would do.
Correct.
On the 16th of March, when you got to Town Hall, did you observe Ms. Cluff in the parking lot at that time?
No,
Were you aware that she was already there?
no,
You first became aware of her because somebody informed you she was there, correct?
she parked her car next to mine at the front door.
You never spoke to her on the 16th?
Correct,
She never spoke to you on the 16th?
correct.
She never spoke to anyone you were with on the 16th?
I'm not aware of that.
In fact, she stayed in her vehicle on the 16th until you left, correct?
I'm not aware of that. I went back inside the building. She was in her car when I went in. She was in her car when I came out.
Your wife was not present in the parking lot of Town Hall on March 16th, was she?
Correct,
Your daughter was not present in the parking lot of March 16th.
correct.
And other than those two incidents, you've not had any other contact with Ms. Cluff, have you?
Correct.
You indicated that you want privacy on your private property for you, your wife, and your daughter. Isn't it true that Ms. Cluff has never been on your private property, sir?
Not that I'm aware of.
As a council member, when you became interested in running, you were aware that your position would be questioned by citizens of Dewey-Humboldt, right?
Yes,
And you're aware that there is a process in order to become elected?
yes,
You're aware that certain information about you and your background is public knowledge and public information available to people of Dewey-Humboldt?
sure.
That can be obtained by an information request, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes, sir?
Yes,
You indicated in your testimony that there's an unusual amount of traffic in your neighborhood since getting your injunction. You have nothing.
I excluded that, Mr.
Okay, very good. And you are aware that Ms. Cluff is politically active and speaks out about what she believes are political injustices. Would you agree with that?
yeah,
And she has in fact spoken out about certain things that you have been involved with, specifically with regards to the vegetation ordinances that were removed. Is that correct?
not aware of her, no. No. You know, anything other than prior to my being a council member, maybe?
You indicated that the photographs were taken by you, and I think you said May 25th, of your home and your neighbors' homes. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that was at the recommendation of your attorney?
it was brought to my attention by my attorney at the time that
And-
you had spoken to her about Mrs. Cluff's defense being that she was in my neighborhood taking pictures of vegetation.
So, sir, you
So
will,
that's why I took the pictures.
the question was, you took the pictures on May 25th at the recommendation of your attorney, yes or no?
Yes,
With respect to the vegetation, isn't it true, sir, that you are the one at the council meetings that complained of overgrowth of vegetation in your neighborhood, specifically your neighbors, that was bringing down the property value of your home, the rest of the town's
No,
property.
absolutely incorrect.
Do you recall speaking about that situation at the February 2nd town meeting? Town council meeting?
That if we eliminated the maintenance clause in the if we didn't adopt the 2018 building ordinance and we eliminated the maintenance clause in it, that was going to be a problem.
That it would bring down your property value and the value of the town if
Of course.
vegetation was allowed to overgrow.
Of course.
And you had some concerns about overgrown vegetation in different parts of Dewey-Humboldt, correct?
No. I never specified any locations.
Just one moment, I just want to look at my notes here.
Ms. Chapman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Coughlin, let me cut to the chase a little bit here. I've looked at these pictures. I live in rural Dewey-Humboldt as well. Not as nearly as manicured as this number one area on South Dewey Road. But I've looked at these pictures. They appear to be houses that are fire-wise. Fire-wise is 15 feet from the house. So I'm not sure where we're going with this.
And I will move on. And again, it will become more clear when Ms. Cluff testifies, but this is to lay the foundation regarding her purpose of being here. You said you were concerned by Ms. Cluff, yet you walked behind her vehicle at Town Hall and took photographs 6 and 7, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
She was in the vehicle at the time that you did this, correct?
Yes.
And you were behind her vehicle,
Yes.
fearful of what she could be capable of at that time.
Yes.
You got a close-up photograph, 6 and 7, and you proceeded to follow her as she pulled out of Town Hall
I'm sitting in my vehicle.
and took photograph 8 and 9 as she was leaving,
I'm sitting in
correct?
my vehicle.
Answer the question, did you
No,
take
not
this?
correct. Yes, I took it.
As she was leaving
The
Town
question
Hall,
was, did he follow her? His answer was no.
did you take photograph 8 and 9 as Ms. Cluff was pulling out of Town Hall?
Yes.
Photographs 12 through 26. Where were you at when you took those photographs, sir? Do you have them or do you need to? Oh, you've got them.
12 through 26. I believe those are all to be the pictures of the neighbors' homes and such.
Yes.
I was in the street in front of these homes,
So you,
or I was on my property, or I was on my deck, or I was in my backyard, or I was in my front yard.
all right, I'm going to direct your attention to photograph number 18. Is that photograph taken from public roadway?
No.
That's taken from private property.
Yes.
Where were you at when you took that?
In my yard.
That's in your yard.
Yes.
Photograph number 12. Where were you at when you took that photograph?
I was at the top of Chris Dragon's driveway.
Were you on Mr. Dragon's private
I
property?
was.
Go to 13.
Same thing.
On Mr. Dragon's property.
Dragon's property.
14.
In the street in front of, I can't remember the last name now, right? I was in the street in front of that house.
And that would be on the public roadway in front of that home,
Yes.
14?
Correct.
Photograph 15. Where were you at?
Chris Dragon's property again.
Photo 16.
Chris Dragon's property.
Photo 17.
The public roadway. And all the rest of them that are on from the public roadway.
What about 25? That looks like maybe in a driveway. 1313.
Public roadway.
You made your point, Mr. Chapman. Where are you going with it?
You spoke about your daughter being concerned with her reaction and taking her to public places only when it is safe. After getting your injunction, isn't it true that you took her to the ice cream social hosted by Miss Cluff, despite the fact that you
Hosted by Mortimer's Farms. Right there, newsletter states.
sponsored by...
Mortimer's, hosted by Mortimer's Farms.
Sir, I need you to wait till the question's finished and then answer the question.
Okay.
Were you aware that Miss Cluff organized the ice cream social?
Yes,
And you were required to RSVP to her, correct?
no, I didn't have to RSVP. I'm a town councilman.
And you knew
It
Miss...
was my duty to go
You knew Miss Cluff.
acknowledge
Hold
the
on, there's
man.
no question before you, Mr. Thomas. Your attorney will have a chance to follow up.
Can my client be allowed to finish the answer to his question?
I didn't ask him a question.
Technically, she's right.
Mr. Thomas, you knew Miss Cluff would be at the ice cream social that she was hosting at Rummer, correct?
Yep,
And you went with your wife and your daughter to that event
correct,
after you got the injunction against harassment,
correct,
after you indicated you were fearful for your daughter's safety, for your
correct.
safety, and your wife's safety. Is that correct?
Yes, we were all armed.
Did you see Miss Cluff at that event?
This is
I did not.
asking you a question. Mr. Thomas, do you have guardianship of Caitlin?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, right. I want to have medical power of attorney over her, and
That's my answer to my question.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Redirect Mr. Coughlin, and if we can cut this a little bit on the short side, it would hurt my feelings.
No redirect.
All right, Mr. Coughlin, Mr. Thomas, I'm sorry, you can step down.
thank you, Your Honor.
And we'll take a 10-minute recess. I would caution both the defendant and the plaintiff. You are not to say anything to the witnesses in the lobby.
Yes, sir.
Not, oh, it's getting late, or anything. Not one noun or word or expression. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I also ask that you would admonish all individuals who are sitting in the courtroom not to discuss the nature of the testimony with anyone outside of the courtroom as well.
That's correct. Does anybody have any questions?
Your Honor, I have a question. May I just stay in here?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Continue to use the restroom.
We'll be back in session in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, 2:45 officially.
Yes. Yeah.